Welcome everyone to another episode of Pop Rant Radio, the podcast where two pop culture junkies discuss popular and sometimes not so popular culture. My name is Moss, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Eric. How are you today, sir?
Dramatic pause.
Dramatic pause.
We should hang the intro right here for you. Just attach to your
so I can just read it in front of me?
Yes.
And I'll just read dramatic pause.
Yes, which we will have to put in. Do you like Shrek? I don't like Shrek.
Why don't you like Shrek?
I actually don't like Shrek.
The first Shrek is fine. The second one's kind of funny.
I think Shrek 2 is better than Shrek. Why are we talking about Shrek?
I don't know. You're the one who brought it up.
So Shrek makes fun of Disney. Disney's the theme of the week.
Obligatory transition.
There we go.
Segue.
Yep, well, you don't know what to do. Address the issue.
This week's topic is underrated Disney films. We're going to talk about our favorite Disney movies, but the ones that are specifically underrated, like the ones that don't get all of the attention that some of the big ones do.
Right. Yeah, because it's like one of the ones I'm going to talk about I know is my favorite.
Me too.
I do like, some of the bigger ones. Like, I am a big fan of Aladdin.
Aladdin's great.
I do like, I like Jungle Book a lot. I like Peter Pan a lot. And Frozen sucks. Frozen doesn't suck. Frozen overshadows Tangled, which I think is
Tangled was
better
great.
movie.
Yeah, Tangled was awesome.
There goes every fan.
All right, so we're in agreement. Tangled was awesome. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
That was the underrated movie. Did you enjoy it?
We're underrated Disney films. Maybe the ones that hopefully you out there have seen, and if you haven't, give them a chance because, well, we like them. So we're going to open with one that we both love, which is The Great Mouse Detective.
Yes.
Awesome movie. So for those of you who haven't seen it, go see it.
Yes.
It's great. And basically The Great Mouse Detective is Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, but they're mice.
Right. Which is such a weird idea.
Yeah. And Sherlock Holmes and Watson actually make an appearance in the film. Like the real quote-unquote Sherlock Holmes and Watson make an appearance in the movie. Briefly.
Yep.
The main character is Basil of Baker Street, who is the takeoff of Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
Obviously in reference to Basil Rathbone, who played Sherlock Holmes in many of the...
incredibly clever.
Yeah, it's great.
And of course his title of Baker Street is the 221B Baker Street, which is the famous abode of both Sherlock and Dr. Watson.
Right, it's the address of their like headquarters, like his apartment building.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's implied in the movie that the mice live below Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. So the basic idea of the movie is at the very beginning there's a little girl named Olivia and her father is like a toy maker.
Yes.
And he gets kidnapped by this bat, this like henchman who we find out who he works for later on in the movie. And Olivia ends up enlisting the help of Basil of Baker Street and his new partner, Dr. Dawson, who's obviously the takeoff of Dr. Watson. Through a whole bunch of adventures that they have together in the seedy underbelly of Mice England.
Yes.
They have to rescue her father. And it turns out the person responsible for the kidnapping ultimately is Ratigan.
Played by the great late Vincent Price.
Yes, Ratigan is Basil's arch nemesis.
Yes, and he is fantastic.
He's amazing. And of course, Ratigan is a rat, but he has a big problem with his henchmen calling him a rat. Like he wants to be a mouse. Because most of the other characters in the movie are mice. There's a couple of one of the henchmen is like a lizard. It's actually like the same lizard from Alice in Wonderland, like the chimney sweep. Like it's the same art.
Oh, Disney reusing things? That never happened.
No way.
The entirety of Robin Hood.
But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in the movie. Not only does it obviously use the aesthetic and the themes and kind of setting of the classic Sherlock Holmes stories. Right. It also really plays up like Basil of Baker Street. He's this kind of eccentric genius. Like he plays the violin, and he's
still like a little cold, like Sherlock is.
Yeah,
but not to the same extent. Like he's not mean.
Right, he's not mean. He's kind of played up as being almost like
he's pompous.
Yeah, he's pompous, and he's slightly socially like he kind of misses social cues.
Right,
but he's clearly a genius. Yeah, it's fantastic movie. There's a couple really dark parts, like specifically at the end.
Right,
which spoilers. The finale takes place on Big Ben, the clock, and it's
Ratigan's hair gets all screwed up.
Yeah,
and, lightning in his eyes are all freaking out.
Yeah, it's like Basil versus Ratigan, and they're on top of the Big Ben clock, like the face of the clock.
Right.
They're fighting against each other, and Ratigan kind of like loses it, and he like scratches at Basil, and like his he gets like cut and scratched all over him, and it's kind of this like dark scene in combination with the lightning and the rain and the music, and it's intense.
It's a little I would almost say it's a little too intense at times for kids.
Yeah, it's scary, but in that like classic good Disney way.
Yeah, because it does a really, really good job of making this clear cut. It's a Disney movie while still remaining very true to the Sherlock Holmes like lore and everything. Like it fits the tone of a Sherlock Holmes. While still like not offending children or not putting anything too adult in it. Right,
and it's a mystery to be solved. Like you figure out through the course of the film why Ratigan kidnapped the toy maker, and basically he wants to create this sounds really stupid when we describe it here, but he wants to create a robot version of the Mouse Queen of England and basically put the robot in the real queen's place and have the robot declare Ratigan king.
Yeah, kind of like knight him.
Yeah, exactly. And declare him like the leader, the supreme chancellor, or whatever you want to call him. Star Wars.
Yes.
And instill him in power so he can kind of control everything. And there's a lot of really great characters. The ones we already mentioned, Basil, Dr. Dawson, Ratigan.
Yep.
Olivia's father is kind of funny. He's like this eccentric toy maker. He's got the classic like small round glasses and the big mustache.
He's a little dopey.
He actually reminds me a lot of Merlin.
Wilford Brimley?
Of Wilford Brimley, exactly. He reminds me a lot of Merlin from Sword in the Stone, which we're going to get to in a minute here.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's a really fun movie. It like we said keeps kind of the aesthetic and everything of the classic Sherlock Holmes stories. The other really great characters, Ratigan has a pet cat.
Yeah.
And then Basil has a pet dog, a bloodhound, who's very loyal and like kind of transports them around the city. There's a couple really cool sequences. One of them takes place in like a toy store.
Right.
And the bat is running away from Basil and the group, and he's like activating all these toys. Kind of reminds me of like classic like the first Terminator movie where they're in like the machine factory and they're activating all the machines.
Right.
Like the bat's running around activating all the toys. Like there's like, a little monkey with cymbals banging together and like a merry-go-round, and they have to like get through all these obstacles. And then towards the end, when they're chasing after Ratigan, the sequence that takes place inside the clock tower
with all like the
gears and everything.
Yeah, they gotta jump through.
I think it might actually be the very first computer-generated sequence in a Disney movie, because this movie is like 1980, 1986. So obviously like way before a lot of CGI present movies. But the clock tower sequence is one of the earliest examples of Disney using computer-generated animation.
Right.
And it's fantastic, like with all the gears turning and interacting with each other and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it looks gorgeous too.
It does.
I mean, 1986 it's old, but it's not too old. But it, I think, almost outshines some of the Renaissance films.
I agree. The movie has a real charm to it, just with the setting of England, and it really plays up the fact that this is in actual England, but it's like
it's like a mouse version.
Yeah, but it implies heavily that actual England exists, and these are just like the mice who have kind of like imitated the actual society of England.
And normal England still goes on. Every day is fine.
Right.
While this entire thriving community below is going through hell.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a couple of other really charming things in the movie too. Like there's a scene where Basil and Dr. Dawson have to go, like they have to disguise themselves as like seedy underbelly like crooks, and they go into like this dive bar because they're looking for information.
Right.
And there's this whole like showgirl scene where the mouse woman like comes out and she's doing like this seductive dance, and all the guys in the bar are like, oh yeah. A lot of really fun stuff in the movie. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, give it a watch. It's charming and it's fun. And besides a few scary parts, pretty easy for kids.
I think it's fine for kids. I think like 4 and up, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, towards the end there's a couple scary parts, but there's no like overabundance of violence or anything like that.
It's just really the ending.
Right. Like all good Disney movies, there's a couple of dark moments, but makes it all the better.
Yeah. So one of the movies that I actually didn't like a lot when I was younger was Tarzan. Wasn't a super big fan of it. I remember getting really scared in the theater because my little sister, who was I think below 10 when it came out, had to go to the bathroom, so my mom took her out, and they went out like right during, I think it's either a jaguar or it's a cheetah, or it's a leopard.
It's a big old cat.
Right, where the big cat breaks into the treehouse where Tarzan is at, and the gorillas save it. I'm not going to talk about Tarzan, but Phil Collins worked again with Disney later on to bring Brother Bear, which no one saw, including you. You've never seen it.
I have never seen Brother Bear, but you talk about it, so...
Which is fine. I really like Brother Bear. Mm-hmm. So Brother Bear is the story... I believe it's in Alaska. It's either in Alaska or Canada, but it's up north.
They're the same thing, really.
Right. And there is a group of people, like a tribe, and there are 3 brothers. There is the youngest brother, Kenai. He's kind of brash and makes like a couple really bad decisions, which eventually leads him down this bad path where he sees his oldest brother get in a fight with a bear on top of like a glacier. And through a series of events, his brother ends up dying in this fight. So Kenai goes to get revenge on his brother, kills the bear, and in turn, the spirit world turns him into a bear. Mm-hmm. So that's the story, and it's kind of a cliche story, and it's weird because it kind of came out after the whole someone does something bad, so they turn into an animal, and they have to redeem themselves, and then they're not an animal anymore. Story that happened a lot. We're getting 9 lives later this year, so
oh man,
we'll wait and see that. So Kenai, as a bear, has to travel across either Alaska or Canada. Again, I don't remember.
The North.
The North. He has to travel on the other side of the wall with a young cub by the name of Koba who's lost his mother. And they're going to this big bear thing where the salmon are going to be really good. He's planning on meeting his mom there.
Basically the Green Valley, but for bears.
Right. So but the whole time, Kenai is being hunted by his middle brother, whose name is Sitka, who witnesses both his older brother being killed by the bear and then assumes that Kenai as a bear kills Kenai.
Okay.
So there's also that element of they're being hunted. It's really good. Again, Phil Collins does the music, so the music is really good. It's a little cheesy here and there, but it's catchy. It's fun.
Disney, yeah.
They're accompanied by 2 moose who are actually surprisingly funny. Like they're the cliche stupid Disney
Is it
character.
moose or meese?
It's definitely meese.
Mises?
2 mises join them. 2 mice join them. And actually, the cool thing about it is one of the moose is played by Rick Moranis.
Oh, okay.
Which is actually kind of before he kind of dropped off the charts.
He doesn't really do a lot anymore.
And he's really funny in it. So it's got this really good tension, and I'm gonna have to spoil it because one of the things that sticks out to me in this movie is that spoiler alert, you find out that the bear that Kenai kills is Koba's mother. And there's a scene where he sits him down and he's like, "Hey, look, your mom's not coming. I'm the reason why." Like, it's this really emotional scene where he's pretty much like, "Hey, I killed your mom. I'm sorry."
Was his mother's name Martha?
Yes.
Okay.
As soon as Coda said it, like, Kenai just throws himself from the cliff and it's over. There's also a lot of like character development where he slowly finds out responsibility by caring for Coda. And actually, in the end, there's a really good kind of twist to the story where he's turned back into Kenai. And then he actually requests, because he sees like his brother's spirit, he actually requests his brother's spirit to turn him back into a bear so that he can raise Coda and like take care of him. And it's really good. It's surprisingly really funny. If you're boring like I am and you listen to a ton of commentary tracks, the commentary track is actually done by the 2 moose. And it's more like a mystery science theater.
Oh, that's really
than
good.
Like a commentary track. Like
that's
you
really
even
clever.
at times see their antlers. And it's really funny. Like you can tell they spent like a lot of time on it. So if you want to hear Rick Moranis rip apart his own movie, there you go.
That sounds awesome.
But like the animation is gorgeous in it. It's a lot of northern scenery. So you see like a lot of like mountains, a lot of ice, a lot of dense forests. The northern lights are present. It's gorgeous. It actually has Michael Clark Duncan as one of the bears, and he's just like an enormous bear. He's like really heartwarming, and it's a perfect casting. But it really stuck out to me that it's kind of like a cliche coming of age story, blah, blah, blah. But it goes to certain places that I'm a little surprised by. Like, the fact that his mom dies could have been just like, she falls from the cliff and dies, or, she saves Coda like Lion King or whatever. I don't know. But the fact that the main character kills the mom out of revenge after he's told not to, after he's told to leave it alone. The bear was protecting a cub, leave it alone. He goes out, does a malicious act, and then has to pay for it. And like, it's really interesting for a Disney movie to cover that kind of ground.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, I wouldn't say it's not one of my favorites. I do really, really like it. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely say it's worth a watch, though. If not for just Rick Moranis.
Sounds deep.
Yes.
Like deep dish pizza deep.
Nope.
not that deep. Not that deep.
Not Detroit. But, so, and Walking Phoenix is Kenai.
Oh, River's not dead, brother.
Yup.
You think River Phoenix is going to listen to this and be offended?
Probably like, son of a bitch. I'm going to find these two guys in Wisconsin. We're both in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Come get us, River Phoenix.
So speaking of animals...
Try your best not to do it.
Segue.
There we go.
So another movie that I really like that I feel like has kind of fallen by the wayside or no one really talks about it is The Rescuers Down Under.
Chip and Dale?
Chip and Dale. Rescue Rangers.
Chip and Dale!
I always remember Tailspin.
Oh, yeah, which was Jungle Book?
Yeah, it was like Jungle Book, but... So, side note. Okay, this is...
We're gonna derail this.
Right, this is definitely derailing right now. So, does the Jungle Book take place in modern day, or is it... Because I kind of get the vibe like it's like the maybe like late 1800s. Whenever you picture like a British safari guy.
Yeah. It's like Tarzan years.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so maybe like the 20s or the 30s or something like that.
When like people are just starting to get interested enough and safe enough to go through forests.
But then in Tailspin they have like airplanes.
Right, they have like biplanes and like stuff from like 1940.
But like Baloo has like a Hawaiian shirt on. Like I feel like they didn't have Hawaiian shirts in 1940.
Well, and I remember like, because the thing I don't remember about that show is, so it is clearly supposed to be Jungle Book.
Yes.
And like, Shere Khan's the bad guy.
I believe so, yes.
Louie's in it every once in a while.
Yes.
But isn't a wolf a bad guy too?
Star Wolf.
Yes.
From Star Fox.
Absolutely, it was Star Wolf. I can't let you do that, Baloo. But the wolves were good.
Yeah,
like,
they raised Mowgli. Maybe they got pissed off after Mowgli left.
Because Mowgli shot him down.
Wow. That got intense. He was a man cub after all. Do you think Mowgli grew up to shoot Bambi's mom?
Dang. There's no deer in that forest. I mean, the Jungle Book forest is incredibly ambiguous because it's like, what forest contains a bear, a tiger, a panther, an orangutan, and a bunch of wolves?
The same one
and a porcupine.
Bambi's mom got shot.
Yep. The deer are like the only one absent from that forest because they're all shot by Mowgli.
Anyway, so Rescuers Down Under.
Huge derail.
So for some context, there was originally a movie called The Rescuers.
Which is one that I've seen. I don't think I've seen Down Under. It doesn't sound super familiar.
Yeah, so there was The Rescuers, which came out in 1977, and apparently my movies involve mice.
Yes.
Because The Rescuers is basically about this group
two mice in London, and one is based off Sherlock Holmes.
It's
completely different from the Mouse Detective.
They kind of are detectives. So the Rescuers are this organization of different animals, but again, primarily mice.
Right.
Who have like communications around the world, and like when children get reported missing, they try to go save them. So they're kind of like this, I don't know, like detective agency. All about saving children.
The Child Protective Agency.
The Child Protection Agency.
Do you think Mr. Bubbles works for them? From Lilo and Stitch?
Definitely.
I just hope he's the only man in there.
He's just in the background. He's like awkwardly like crammed into the corner, like hunched down, like, hey guys.
Like one of those like little plastic chairs for children.
So in the first movie, the rescuers, which are Bernard and Miss Bianca. Bernard and Miss Bianca go and rescue a little girl named Penny, who is being held in the swamps of like Louisiana.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Creepy witch woman.
She's not a witch.
She looks like a witch woman.
She's a creepy lady. She has really
Heartgraven.
long fingernails and a gemmed ring, I think. And she has 2 pet alligators.
Are you sure she's not a witch?
There's no magic or anything. They're looking for a diamond that's like in the shape of a skull or the size of a skull or something.
Skull?
Yeah, Indiana Jones shows up.
I love you much.
Shia LaBeouf. No wonder that movie wasn't very good. So
It was amazing.
The first one's kind of weird, and it's okay. It has some really strange music choices.
Yeah.
But anyway, it had to be around because then we got the sequel in 1990 called The Rescuers Down Under. And as you might have guessed, takes place in Australia.
What?
So there's a little boy named Cody, and I guess he can talk to animals, which is kind of weird. The movie never really explains that. But
Eliza Thornberry.
All the animals talk, I guess, in the first movie, so makes sense. But anyway.
Yeah, it is kind of always like left kind of strange in Disney movies. How sometimes the people can hear them, sometimes they can't.
It's just kind of weird. So Cody finds a nest of eagle eggs, and then he finds the mother eagle, and the mother eagle and he become friends, quote unquote. Like the mother eagle gives him a feather, and he actually like
of our friendship.
He rides the eagle in like this gorgeously animated, not like that.
How big? No, I mean how big is this eagle?
It's really big. Like it's like huge. It's
really?
like a it's like a.
Is it like a Lord of the Rings eagle?
I think maybe it's a condor. No, it's definitely an eagle, but it's like the size of a condor. Like it's really
Lord
really
of the
big.
Rings eagles.
Yes, exactly. It's the king of the eagles from Lord of the Rings. This is like a major crossover from all these different movies. Indiana Jones rides into Mordor at the end with his whip, fighting off Sauron.
Good luck with that. No man can defeat him.
So the plot of the movie is Cody befriends the eagle, and then there's a poacher.
It just sounds
I know, it's weird.
It sounds so goofy.
So Cody befriends the eagle, and then there's a poacher voiced by George C. Scott, actually. It's awesome.
Yes.
And he has a pet lizard. It's like a giant... I don't think it's an iguana. It's too big to be an iguana, but it's like a...
It's played by Tone Loc?
Yes. It's like a... It's almost like a Komodo dragon, but I know that's not what it's supposed to be.
Are you sure it's not Tone Loc? This sounds like Tone Loc's Komodo dragon from Thumbelina?
Sure.
It's either Thumbelina or it's...
I don't remember Thumbelina. I know I've seen it.
Or it's that,
all I remember is...
That forest movie. It's that forest movie. The Bat, played by Robin Williams.
The Warriors of Virtue?
No! The one with the bat, played by Robin Williams.
Ferngully.
Yes, I think it's a Ferngully.
Or the 80-minute Avatar.
Yes.
Because James Cameron just ripped off Ferngully to make Avatar, along with Dances with Wolves and all this other movies. And Pocahontas. Doesn't matter. Anyway, Rescuers Down Under. It's actually a movie. There's a poacher played by George C. Scott.
Awesome.
And he steals the eagle eggs along with Cody. He kidnaps him.
Just mistaken him for an eagle egg?
Yeah, I think he gets trapped in the back of the truck or something like that. I can't remember really.
It's like, I'll just keep you here.
No, he doesn't sound like that at all. He's not Australian, actually. He doesn't have an Australian... He just sounds like George C. Scott. Like, he's basically... He has, like...
an Australian accent?
He has, like a vest, and he has, like, the Crocodile Dundee hat with, like, the teeth lining the brim and all that. But he's just an asshole.
Does he have a Foster's in his hand the whole time?
Foster's.
It's like, these eagle eggs will get me 3 packs of
Australian for beer. You think we can get a brand deal?
This episode brought to you by... Foster's!
Australian for beer. So Bernard and Miss Bianca find out that Cody's been kidnapped, and they go off to Australia to save him with the help of a albatross bird.
Yeah, it's not seagull.
Played by John Candy.
Yes.
Who's really good in this movie, too.
The late John Candy.
The late John Candy.
How long does that flight take?
I don't remember. It's a long time.
And can an albatross carry a coconut?
Because I think they're flying from New York. Depends. Is it unladen or is it African or European? Oh, so when they get to Australia, and like a subplot of this movie is that Bernard wants to propose to Miss Bianca.
Okay.
And
I thought they were married in the first one.
No, they're not. They're not. They're just working together, and it's implied that Bernard has feelings for her, but she's kind of like oblivious. She's
all about the job.
They don't really. Yeah, exactly. And she has she's portrayed as like a sexy mouse, if there is such a thing. Like she's like intelligent and she has like an accent and everything.
This is the second time you've referenced a sexy mouse.
Is it?
Yeah,
the dancer in Great Mouse Detective. This is all. I'm just going to title this episode "Sexy Mice."
I'm kind of worried about
Disney.
you now. The third movie better not be Rescuers.
So that would be funny though if I did the second one, and then the first one.
So my last movie is The Rescuers.
Man, we're way off track. Oh well. Gosh. And so they get to Australia, and then they enlist the help of basically Crocodile Dundee, but as a mouse. It's like this Australian guy, and he's putting the moves on Miss Bianca.
Whoa.
And Bernard is all like, oh, he has like a ring that he wants to propose with, and he keeps like taking out, looking at it.
Is it a tiny ring?
It is a tiny ring, yes. So, spoilers, at the end of the movie,
Cody's dead.
Cody dies. They eat his flesh.
Jesus.
To perform this sacrificial ritual.
And Miss Bianca's a polygamist.
So they save Cody, and yay, everything works out. George C. Scott, poacher dude, gets killed. He falls in.
Jeez.
It's very Temple of Doom style, where he falls into a river, and there's a bunch of like crocodiles and alligators, whichever they have in Australia. I don't know.
I assume crocodiles.
I think they're crocodiles. Yeah. And anyway, like he's like swimming away from him, and he gets away, and he's like, "Oh, I got away!" And then he falls over a waterfall, and it's heavily implied that he is very much dead.
It usually rocks.
But the animation is really, really good, as is with most Disney movies. But specifically, there's a sequence at the beginning where Cody is riding on the mother eagle, and they're like flying through the clouds and like over the landscape and past other birds, and like the music just crescendos at the right time. It's very reminiscent of that scene in the first How to Train Your Dragon, when he's riding on Toothless. And it's just like the music's just perfect as they're weaving in and out of the caves, by the water and all that. It's very
not a Disney movie.
Yeah, I know. It's very, very, it's very, very similar to that. Like it really evokes that emotion of wonder and amazement.
Whimsy.
The movie is basically just whimsy. The movie's basically just like a postcard for Australia. Come here, see this.
As long as you're not an eagle.
There's this. I remember another moment, and there's this really almost like depressing moment where they report Cody missing. Like his mother reports him missing, and Cody doesn't have a dad, by the way, in the movie. Like it's just his mom, which is not a heavy plot point, but I feel like every time we talk about movies, like kids movies, like when we
someone's missing a parent.
Yeah, the kids movie episode, like everybody's an orphan or missing at least one parent. There's this part where the audio is like the radio announcing that the little boy is missing, that Cody is missing, and then it's like it doesn't show their faces, but like the camera is showing like from the shoulders down, like a ranger walks up to the house and knocks on the door, and Cody's mom answers, and the ranger just like hands her Cody's backpack. And just in the animation, like you really get this sense that like she like grasps the backpack and kind of hugs it, and like you don't see her face, but you really get the sense of emotion that's going into the scene. I don't know. I really, really like this movie. It's not like the best movie ever by any means, but it's totally worth watching. And you do not have to watch the first one first. I saw them in the wrong order when I was a kid.
Troublesome.
I saw Down Under, and then I saw the first one like 2 or 3 years later. And I think we recorded it on VHS, like my dad had for me.
It's illegal.
And yeah, it was. But I think we actually had recorded like The Rescuers Down Under and then The Rescuers. So when I watched the tape all the time, like they were in reverse order.
Plus, you probably kept on going back to rewatch The Rescuers Down Under.
Exactly.
You know another movie I actually really like that not a lot of people talk about? I actually liked The Emperor's New Groove.
That's a good one too. I saw that with my dad, actually.
Eartha Kitt as Yzma.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, you've got
John Goodman, David Spade. The guy who plays Joe.
Patrick Warburton. Hey, Bader. Hey, Bader.
That's always like a Squirrel Scout.
Brock Sampson. At last we meet.
So, actually, my favorite Disney movie is fairly underrated as well, and that is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The classic, based on the classic book written by Victor Hugo. A depressing tale. Victor Hugo, of course, famously known for writing Les Mis.
For writing?
For writing. And Les Mis, of course, I would argue is fairly more well known than Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, especially now, like it's been adapted so many times famously. Yeah,
and everyone talks about how Les Mis is so depressing, and it's everyone dies, it's so sad.
Did you hear Russell Crowe sing? It was depressing.
That was depressing. Did you hear his back go boing when he hit the water?
Surprised they didn't put in a Wilhelm scream.
Right. Or a Goofy scream.
Which
we'll talk about. I personally think that Hunchback is a lot more depressing because literally everyone dies in the end of Hunchback.
It's like The Departed.
The only person I think that doesn't die
Spoilers.
I think Captain Phoebus' wife doesn't die. I think it's the only person that does not die in Hunchback.
In the original story.
Right. So, Hunchback of Notre Dame, for those of you who don't know, is the story of a orphan. The main character, who is Quasimodo, his mother, who's a gypsy, is killed by the villain of the film, who in the book is a priest or whatever. He's a member of the church.
Some member of the clergy, yeah.
In the movie, he is a judge, and it is Claude Frollo, who is amazing.
Best Disney villain ever.
Like, hands down. Like, there's so many good Disney villains, but Frollo is just fantastic.
100%.
So, Frollo, when he kills Quasimodo's mother, is approached by the head of the church, who makes him realize his sins, and Frollo, in being scared of the punishment of not the priest, but of God himself, decides to take on Quasimodo kind of as his own and raise him. But
yeah, he adopts him.
The catch is Quasimodo stays in the bell towers of Notre Dame.
Right, because as it turns out, he's a hunchback.
So we then, of course, jump to the future when Quasimodo is probably a young adult, and all he wants to do is he wants to leave the bell tower, essentially, but Frollo constantly is holding him back. He eventually runs into a gypsy by the name of Esmeralda, which is actually, fun fact, is actually the original title of the book, La Esmeralda. It wasn't Hunchback of Notre Dame. That was through constant retellings. The more you know.
Do, 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 do.
I don't know if anyone's going to... I hope people catch that, too. So he likes Esmeralda because Esmeralda treats him kindly, even though his face... However,
even though his face... Quasimodo's a rough-looking gentleman.
Yes, he's not a dime. Let's say that much.
He's lucky if he's a pence.
Ooh,
money jokes.
Sins all over the place. However, Esmeralda also catches the eye of... We can't get off this pence joke.
That was good. He's not a dime.
However, Esmeralda also catches the eye of Frollo, who develops... And I love this because it's like a really real emotion.
Yes, this is why Frollo is the best villain.
He develops this lustful desire for her.
Yes.
While he hates her because he hates gypsies.
Right. It's really great because Frollo's main goal is to get rid of all the gypsies.
Yes.
But he's clearly attracted to Esmeralda. He's kind of mesmerized by her, and you're going to get to this in a minute with the theme song, but he's a great villain because he's complicated and he's complex, because he knows that he shouldn't have feelings for Esmeralda,
right?
But he can't help the fact that he lusts after her, and that whole idea is he knows that he's being a hypocrite. He knows that he's betraying what he believes is the will of God to get rid of the gypsies by being attracted to her, and he knows that's wrong, but he can't help himself. It's so good.
It is he's amazing.
Yes.
So, I'm kind of getting off the plot, though.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. So, at the same time, she also attracts the eye of a knight in the Royal Defense. I don't remember what it is.
The City Guard.
Yeah, he's actually not City Guard in the book. I think he's a returning military figure.
Sure. He's a knight.
Yeah, Captain Phoebus. And so, it kind of starts this weird love trapezoid between Quasimodo, who loves her, Phoebus, who loves her, and Frollo, who lusts after her. So a bunch of events kind of unravel while Frollo gets closer and closer to purging the city of Paris of all gypsies. Quasimodo eventually finds out Frollo's plan to completely wipe out the gypsies in Paris, and he kind of deduces the location of the City of Miracles, as it's called, which is the kind of the gypsy haven. So they go to warn them. They are accused of being traitors, and they're almost killed by Clopin, who is kind of like a weird narrator god character because he's kind of aware of the story being told. It's very theatrical, which is, kind of runs the theme of it all. Clopin saves them, but Frollo eventually finds out where the City of Miracles is, and essentially Paris is just kind of thrown into the civil war between the royals, the religious, and the city guard, and the gypsies.
Yeah, it becomes mass chaos.
So much so that Paris actually burns.
Right.
Spoilers from here on out, Quasimodo eventually saves Esmeralda from being burned at the stake, and in turn is attacked by Frollo at the top of Notre Dame, where Frollo actually falls from Notre Dame into Paris' square. It's kind of dark too there because he's like, it's just he's thrown from a building into the fiery like burning that he created, and it's very much like this personification of him falling into hell.
Yeah, it plays with the themes because his theme song that he sings in the movie...
Right, which I'm going to destroy all of that in a second.
Right, but the whole idea... So, briefly, his theme song is Hellfire.
Yes.
All about how he feels like he's going to be condemned to hell because of his feelings for Esmeralda. So, the events, his actions plunge Paris into chaos, and Paris is aflame. And then at the end, when he falls off of the church and goes into the fire, like you said, it's symbolic of him falling into hell.
Yes.
Like, it's very well done.
Right. And just, okay, so now that I've gotten to the plot, I'm going to talk about my favorite thing about this movie, which is the music.
Yes.
So the opening and closing track, which is the Bells of Notre Dame, is glorious. It's a full choir. It is a full bell. It sounds like it's recorded in Notre Dame. It's amazing. The man that they got to play Clopin he's like a Broadway trained singer. Fantastic. Hellfire, the song that we just talked about, is this amazing song that shows Frollo's like fight with himself.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this amazing part in it where he drops to his knees and he turns around and this like entire ensemble of these like blacked out faces, red robes,
hooded figures, yes.
Like they're judging him, and he's like walking across their like lines, and he's saying it's not my fault, it's in God's plan, and they're speaking Latin to him, like casting down judgment on him, and just there's so many lines in that song that are just amazing. They're fantastically well written, and it perfectly encapsulates the fact that he is such a selfish person. But at the same time, like he's trying to fight it, but he just gives into it in the end and just goes for it. Sadly, Quasimodo doesn't get too many great songs, I would say, which is really disappointing because I actually do like Tom Hulce, who plays Quasimodo.
Yeah, he's really good.
Famously known for playing Mozart in Amadeus,
mm-hmm.
Which they do make a joke about. They like plop a powdered wig on him at
yeah, I
one
remember
point.
that.
He doesn't get too many good songs. Esmeralda gets a really good song called God Save the Outcasts, which is just this really depressing song about how she's like, hey God, I know you don't give a shit about us gypsies, but if you could please listen to us for 1 second, just help them.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. But yeah, so the movie at the same time has its faults. I feel like they wrote this movie very like trying to keep it, like we were talking about Great Mouse Detective, where they're trying to keep it true enough, but keep it child friendly.
Yeah, because like you mentioned originally, Frollo, well, the villain of the of the story is a member of the church, which kind of plays into the idea that the church is not always right,
and the church, especially at the time, was incredibly corrupted.
Exactly, and Disney obviously kind of recast the villain in a slightly different role to kind of save face with religious groups and religious people and that sort of thing.
Right.
That being said, they still do a really good job of portraying the idea that, hey, in the context of this story, like Frollo's religion has kind of corrupted his worldview, and he's taking what he believes to be the will of God and kind of twisting it for his own selfish gains. Yeah,
and it's done really, really well. And you could kind of see there's still a lot of adult things that kind of slip through the cracks, like his complete desire for Esmeralda is that of the body. She's very attractive. That's why he wants her.
Yes, it's lustful. It's sexual.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way that she dances and like she puts her scarf around him.
Yes.
And he like takes it out of his shirt, like smells it. It's really creepy.
Again, like we said, the animation in all these movies is good, but like the artwork and the animation on him specifically, on Frollo, is awesome. Just like with like the crags in his face, and like he has that long face, and it is just really expressive, and like it's great.
There's so many kind of funny things looking back to it that have kind of slipped through. Like in the beginning, there's a part where Frollo's kind of going through the alphabet with Quasimodo, and he's giving him a letter, and Quasimodo gives him a word that starts with the letter, and when he gets to D, the word is damnation, which is in a Disney movie. And then when he goes E, the word for E is eternal damnation. And it's like, that's a really funny joke, but Disney just said damnation twice within 5 minutes.
It is good.
So a lot of stuff slips through. Like, we're joking that there's licentious is a word thrown in this.
Yes.
Common, vulgar, weak, licentious crowd is the line itself when he's referring to the people of Paris. But it's so good. There is one major problem, though, that we've talked about. In the books, Quasimodo talks with the gargoyles and the statues because that's kind of all he has as his friends.
Right.
But in the book, it's very set up that they're not real. Like they're imaginary friends. He's making it up.
He's talking to himself. Like you said, his imaginary friends.
So in the movie, they do a very similar thing where he's talking to him, and they talk back to him, to kind of keep the kid-friendly stuff up.
Right. They're animated characters, almost kind of like the silverware and everything in Beauty and the Beast. Like they come to life when no one's around. Life when no one else is around.
And it's really cutesy and it's fine. And there's several scenes where someone will come into the bell tower area where he's at and the gargoyles are at, and they'll clearly be set in weird places with weird things placed on them, where it looks like Quasimodo has placed them there. Right.
The movie implies that it's all in Quasimodo's head. Like, they're not actually real.
Yeah.
And there's several moments in the movie where it kind of reinforces that idea, but...
There's the big classic Disney clash at the end, and in it, Quasimodo is, pushing over the ladders. They're trying to get to the top of Notre Dame to get to Esmeralda. But the gargoyles are also, dropping bricks and, spitting bullets.
Yeah, and, throwing food at people and that sort of
dropping
thing.
Water, and it's hitting people, and it's knocking them down, so no longer is it a possibility that they're all in his head. These are coming to life and helping him.
Yeah, the movie does a really good job of being very ambiguous up until about the last 10, 15 minutes of the film. And the last 10, 15 minutes of the film are kind of the weak point of the movie, unfortunately.
Very easily.
Because like you said, it kind of just comes down to, it's a big battle, and that's essentially what it is. And yeah, with the gargoyles, in that moment, it very much betrays that, I guess they were real the whole time. Yeah, it's unfortunate because they did such a great job of keeping it ambiguous up until that point. And if they would have just left it that way through the movie, that would have been a really cool thing, especially in a Disney film, to make things as ambiguous as they did. But at the last possible minute, they're kind of no, they're real. They're throwing stuff at people.
Yeah, and it's weak, but I feel like this movie was written, and then I feel like it went through quite a few rewrites.
Yeah, they definitely did some punch up for humor.
Even so, I think they added the final song, A Guy Like You, which does not fit with any of the other music in it. It's very poppy and happy and goofy. Whereas all the other songs, there are happy songs, like Topsy Turvy is, it's the song played down in the Festival of Fools, or the Feast of Fools, and it's goofy and it plays around and everything, but A Guy Like You is so out of place, and it's got pop culture references.
Yeah, it's a very contemporary.
So, and it's sung by the gargoyles themselves, so it feels like it was added.
Yeah, it feels out of place and out of time. Everything else kind of fits with the period and the theme, and A Guy Like You is kind of just hey, let's shove a 90s pop song.
Disney movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, there is we were joking about this, that it happened a lot during the Renaissance period. There is a Goofy yell. The classic Goofy, whenever he falls off the cliff, he does his cliche yell. Which, isn't a huge issue, but it's kind of weird, and it kind of takes you out of it, because it's it's a Goofy yell. I'm kind of nitpicking at that, but whatever. But overall, it is a really good movie. I would say this one is definitely not for children.
Yeah, especially at the very, very beginning of the movie when Quasimodo's mother gets killed.
Right, she's kicked in the head and like hits her head on the steps.
Yeah, it's pretty rough at the very, very beginning.
I mean, he even says, "I'm going to cast this thing down to hell where it belongs."
Yeah,
and it's like that's not a children's line.
Yeah, hell is referenced several times. The idea of damnation, like you said, is referenced. Like the theme of the movie, and that honestly, that's why the movie is good, and that's why that Frollo is the best villain, is because the themes and the tone of the movie is a little bit darker than your average Disney movie.
It's very much more adult too.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, kids probably should be slightly older.
Right. Like they'll if they're younger and they watch over someone's shoulders, they probably won't be too like appalled or too hurt.
Right.
I remember as a kid, I really got uncomfortable and I didn't like the scene where Quasimodo's kind of tortured.
Yes, that's rough.
Where his shirt's ripped and he's being hit with tomatoes.
Yeah, that is rough.
That might not be good for them.
Right. It does an effective job of like conveying, because the whole idea of that scene is that Quasimodo, he finally goes down in the city.
Freak.
Yeah, he finally gets down in the city and he's having a good time. And then when people like really stop and look at him, they're like, "Oh man, you're a freak," and they throw things at him.
Right,
and
he's
the
monster from Notre Dame.
Right, and it's this big revelation to him that like, oh, people are as shitty as Frollo told me they are.
Right, but then Esmeralda comes up to him and like cleans his face off, and that's like the big thing. And there's a beautiful line from him later on, which is, "An angel has smiled upon me and looked upon my face without a sense of fright."
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous line. And it's just like, it's a really good, the moral of the story is very good, and it does stand true for any age that watches it, and that is to not like judge a book by its cover. Don't be cruel to people because of the way they look. It's like a lot of the 90s movies had like the forced morals of like, be who you are.
Yeah, it's what's on the inside that counts.
Right. So,
still, face like a pence, not like a dime.
Yeah, it's very deep inside that counts. Overall, it's really, really good.
Definitely recommended.
Also, the gargoyles are named Victor and Hugo.
Ooh, references.
Yeah.
So going along with our favorite Disney movies, my favorite Disney movie and my final underrated movie is
Little Mermaid.
Is The Sword and the Stone from 1963.
Yes.
And I love The Sword and the Stone.
It's almost like
it's not
one of like the classics too.
It is. It's not the best Disney movie ever. Like, it has a few problems which we're going to get into, but
right.
I'm, as you obviously know, and probably a lot of people who listen to this podcast know, I'm a huge sucker for medieval fantasy.
Right.
Knights and dragons and swords and all that stuff. Like, that was my bread and butter when I was a kid. So I really loved this movie and still continue to love it today. So The Sword and the Stone, which you've probably guessed, even if you haven't seen it, is essentially about King Arthur, but before he was King Arthur.
Not yet King Arthur.
Right.
Young wimpy Arthur.
Yeah. They call him the Wart.
Yes.
So Wart is this really scrawny, like blonde-haired kid, which that's actually probably why it also resonated with me very well, is because I'm very scrawny.
Because you were a scrawny, dark-haired kid.
I was a scrawny blonde kid, and he is living as a ward in this castle to this lord, and the lord has a son named Kay.
Right.
And Kay, basically, Wart hangs out with Kay all the time, and they go on like little adventures, like hunting and that sort of thing, because more than anything, Wart wants to become a squire, so he can eventually become a knight. Like, he has his life's ambitions are set on that.
Yeah, he wants to be put in plated armor and a sword and a shield.
Yes, he wants to be a knight. He wants to be a hero. And through the circumstances at the beginning of the film, he ends up meeting Merlin, the wizard.
Right.
And Merlin is fantastic because
he
in this movie...
He kind of steals the whole movie.
He does. He really does. Because Merlin is like a combination... He's very eccentric and he's very clever and he's funny, but he's kind of like this grumpy old man.
Yeah, he's very tired through most of it.
Yeah, he's kind of like... It's like he's like Albert Einstein combined with like... I don't know, like
Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah, and Gandalf the Grey combined with like Walter Matthau. Like, he's just kind of this grumpy, like, but really charming old man. And he essentially teaches Wart throughout the film, hey, it's not about brawn and muscle. It's about your brain. It's about, having a developed mind and being intelligent. And that's how you're going to become a great leader.
Yep.
Because Merlin, in this context, in this adaptation, Merlin kind of can see the future.
Yeah, he knows. I don't know if it's not necessarily he can see the future. It's that he knows that Arthur is like destined for great things.
Yeah, he's kind of like a soothsayer. He actually, I think, uses that terminology in the movie. And so he, like you said, he knows that Wart is destined for great things.
Yeah, sorry, spoiler alert, it's Arthur.
And so he takes it upon himself to give Wart all of this education. Merlin has a pet owl named Archimedes, who is awesome. Archimedes is like really sarcastic.
The smart ass.
Yeah, he's a total smart ass, but he's loyal, and he's great. And throughout the film, Merlin teaches Wart several different lessons. Like they both turn into fish and they go swimming, and Wart learns that there's always big fish, but he uses his mind to outsmart and outrun the bigger fish in the pond. And there's a part where they both turn into squirrels and they have to outrun this wolf. And there's a part where they meet Madame Mim, who's the evil witch sorceress lady.
Like the best part of the whole movie.
Yes, and the movie it's so charming. I would say like the animation is really good.
Yes.
They skip a little bit on the artwork, and they actually some of the assets from Jungle Book are reused, and some of the assets from 101 Dalmatians are reused.
I think some of the actors are even reused too.
Yeah. And I would say the one glaring flaw in the movie is that I think they had a total of 3 different actors play Wart, because the original actor started going through puberty and then his voice was changing.
Right.
And when you watch the movie, it's very evident when they're using a different voice actor. When I was a kid, I thought it was just kind of like quirky and I didn't really know. But now that when I watch it now, it's pretty obvious. But it doesn't ruin the movie by any stretch. Like you said, Merlin kind of makes this movie.
Right. And I think that the big reason why that probably happened and why, maybe it felt a little distressed at times is because this is actually Walt Disney's last film that he worked on before he passed.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did, I don't know if it was just that he did sketches or if he did the storyboard or what was with it, but he passed while after they had started on it, and he didn't finish it either. Mm-hmm. So it kind of plays into that they probably were dealing with his loss.
Yeah, they kind of had to finish the production because it was probably not all the way completed, like you said. But despite its flaws, still a great movie. Great music. Kind of like how we were talking about with Notre Dame. Most of the music, it plays into the setting and the theme, and they really play on. This is medieval England, and this is the times of knights and
wizards
and wizards. Yeah, and it's fun because magic is not it's only used by a couple characters in the film, and there's other characters like the lord of the castle who Wart belongs to. He doesn't. He's scared of magic, and he's like, "Oh, you don't go any for that black magic, do you?" And he's very suspicious of Merlin. And all the characters are just very, very well realized. There's this great sequence where Wart is supposed to be cleaning dishes in the kitchen, so Merlin's like, "Oh, we'll just use magic," and he has all the dishes cleaning themselves. It's very reminiscent of Sorcerer's Apprentice,
right? With Mickey and Sid.
Where the brooms are sweeping things and the mops are mopping the floor and the dishes are washing themselves, and it's this great sequence. And the Lord Sir Hector, that's his name, he comes down in the kitchen and he's like, "This is black magic," and he and Kay fight the plates and the brooms and everything. It's fantastic. It's so charming. And again, Archimedes is great. There's a part where Merlin has to battle against Madame Mim, and they're both turning into different animals.
And it's this one-up contest with each other.
Yeah. Madame Mim turns into a rhinoceros, and Merlin turns into a mouse to scare the rhinoceros, and then she turns into a snake to try and eat the mouse. And it's very, very cleverly done. They really take the idea of magic, and they have a lot of fun with it in this movie.
It's almost it's just readily available. To certain people, it's not a mystical thing. It's just some people do it, and they do it constantly.
Right, and the magic it's not like fireballs and lightning bolts and that sort of thing.
It's really goofy.
Yeah, it's goofy,
stuff.
Clever things. There's another part where Merlin, he's going to go to the castle with Wart, and he's going to live there so he can continue Wart's education. And so he uses magic to pack up everything into his house into this small bag.
Right.
And he's using his magic and singing the song to shrink everything down to fit inside the bag. And, Archimedes is in his little his like little bird home, and it starts to shrink, and he has to
he's
squeeze out of
it.
it. Yeah, and just there's a lot of great back and forth between Merlin and Archimedes. Like they really establish the idea that these two characters have lived together for a really long time, and they know each other's quirks and that sort of thing.
Right.
And then obviously towards the end, at the very beginning of the movie, they set up the legend about the sword Excalibur, that there's a sword in the stone, and it's in the middle of this courtyard in England, and there's an inscription on the sword. I believe it goes like, "Whoever pulleth out this sword is
Shall have the power of Thor."
and Grayskull. Whoever removes this sword from this stone is of noble birth and is by rights king, born of England. So, and then of course, lots of people try to take the sword, and nobody can make it budge. So everybody kind of forgets about the sword. Oh, another charming moment, like the narrator at the very beginning of the movie even says, like, "This was a dark age without hope and without whatever," and then like Merlin comes up and he's like, "It was a dark age indeed." Like he like is aware of the narrator. Again, just a lot of fun.
It is just like a good. It's a classic family film.
Yeah, it really is, and again plays into the setting and the themes very, very well. And then of course at the end, Wart Dee doesn't even know about the sword.
Yeah, he just grabs for a sword.
Yeah, he's looking for a sword because Kay is trying to be knighted. He's in this tournament, and Wart forgets his sword, and so he goes to find a sword, and then Archimedes is like, "Oh, there's a sword in the courtyard," and he grabs it, and there's this kind of like heavenly light and music, and he pulls it out, and he brings it, and when he gets to the tournament, all the knights are like, "Where did you get this? Like, this is the sword in the stone." And they stop the tournament, and they go back to the anvil that the stone that the sword was in, and Sir Hector like puts the sword back in, and he's like, "All right, if you pull it out once, you can do it again." And then Kay's like, wait, let me try first. And then like there's like, it's really well animated. There's like 3 or 4 guys that all run up to the sword, and they're all trying to pull it out at the same time. And then there's this great knight who has this deep voice, and he's like, "Let the boy have a chance." And like he pulls it out, and all the people are like,
with the operatic music again.
Yes, like the upsurge, the music and everything, and everybody's like, "Holy crap, this boy is our king." And Sir Hector, he bows, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, boy. Like, I've treated you like crap." And Kay's kind of like standing there with this grimace on his face, and Sir Hector is like, "Kay, bow to your king." And it's just this great moment. And then Merlin comes back at the very end, and he's talking to Arthur, and he's like, "Oh, look at yourself here. You've got, you're in this kingdom now. You got this great hall. You got this crown, and the crown's like too big for his head, and it keeps like falling down." Yeah, and Merlin goes, "You will be King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table." And Arthur's like, "A round table?" And Merlin goes, "Would you rather have a square one?" He's like, "Oh no, round will be fine." And it's just, obviously, as you can tell listening to this, like, I love this movie. I've seen it a million times, and it's just, again, it's so good. It's so charming. Like, the music's great. The characters are great. All the dialogue is really clever, and I love that movie. So that was our talk on underrated Disney films. Hopefully you've learned something.
Which kind of almost became like favorite Disney films towards the end?
A little bit. Well, because your favorite is Hunchback and mine's Sword and Stone, and those are really underrated Disney movies. Like those are ones that people don't really talk about very often.
Well, did yours get a shitty sequel that ruins the original?
It did not.
Oh, okay.
Luckily.
Hunchback 2 is like, everyone's nice now, and there's a blind girl?
Question marks.
Blind people exist in this movie?
Blind people exist in this movie. Nice. So hopefully you enjoyed our discussion. We certainly enjoyed having it.
Yes.
And check them out if you haven't seen them. All of the ones we talked about today are definitely worth a watch.
Oh yeah.
And if you have seen them or if you watch them, let us know what you think. You can get at the show at Pop Rant Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail. The show is also available on YouTube.
Yep.
And if you are listening on iTunes, please subscribe. That super helps out the show. And as always, the show is also available on Libsyn, the website that hosts the show. Side note, Eric and I just recorded a Let's Play.
Yes, on a game we will not disclose.
That'll probably be up shortly, sooner rather than later, within the next week, maybe 2 weeks. So we're gonna start a little side thing. I think I'm gonna end up calling it Pop Rant Games. I think is what we've
we'll have to go back and re-record.
It's all good. So look for that on YouTube as well. Hopefully that's something that everybody out there enjoys. Just again, kind of gets the podcast and the channel out there, a little more exposure, and hopefully we can keep bringing everyone some fun content.
Maybe
we'll see.
Not.
As always, we'd like to thank Major for the theme songs.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it as always. And I think I say as always, like every time I say as always twice.
Thank you, sir, as always.
Whatever. One of these days I'll get it down. And other than that, do you have anything?
Tangled's better than Frozen.
Tangled is better than Frozen.
Hands down.
So shall it be written, so shall it be done.
What is dead may never die.
What is dead may never die.
Just like the Walt Disney.
Give them the lazy eye. No, it's not Disney. It's not Bluth. Doesn't matter.
Oh, who's not Bluth?
So that's the show for this week. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.